The envelope lingered on my kitchen counter for 3 days before I mustered the courage to open it. It was a plain white envelope, hand addressed to Mrs. Rebecca Mitchell with no return address. There was a sense of foreboding about it, as if it held the potential to disrupt the carefully constructed order of my life. It arrived as I was busy preparing for our upcoming 20th anniversary party. 2 decades with James, the esteemed surgeon and pillar of the community, the man around whom I had built my entire existence. He had grown increasingly distant over the past year, citing long hours at the hospital and numerous administrative duties. On a Tuesday morning, mere days before our anniversary celebration, I finally took a deep breath and opened the envelope while sipping my morning coffee. The aroma of expensive perfume emanated from within as I unfolded the letter. My stomach churned before I even began to read. The elegant handwriting started, "Dear Mrs. Mitchell, you may not know me, but your husband and I have shared a close relationship for the past 11 months. The coffee mug slipped from my hand, crashing onto the Italian. During our recent renovation, James had insisted on marble flooring. I barely noticed the coffee that had splashed on my bare legs as my eyes remained fixated on the letter before me. It was 3 handwritten pages of detailed confessions from a woman named Sophia. In it, she recounted her first encounter at a medical conference in Chicago, sharing how James had purposefully removed his wedding ring before approaching her at the hotel bar. She revealed the vacations they had taken together while I thought he was attending medical symposiums, the promises he had made about leaving me after our anniversary when the time was right, and how he had belittled and mocked me to her. Sophia ended her letter saying, "I'm telling you this because I've realized he's been lying to us both. He doesn't deserve either of us." The final paragraph contained intimate details about my husband that only someone truly close to him would know, leaving me in shock and disbelief. Dark's preferences and habits left no room for denial. When she finished with, "I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this, but I thought you deserved to know before celebrating 20 years of lies," I was shaken. Reading the letter multiple times, each word etched into my mind, I couldn't ignore the careful craftsmanship of the message, the exquisite penmanship, the quality stationery. It was evident that this revelation was no impulsive act, but a deliberate caution from one woman to another. As I folded the pages and placed them back in the envelope, my hands quivered with a mix of emotions. I needed time to process everything. The looming anniversary celebration, featuring a vow renewal and a reception for 150 guests, was a mere 4 days away. Our social circle, comprising colleagues from James Hospital, our publishing team, and both of our families, would all be in attendance. It was a gathering where our supposedly flawless marriage would be on display for everyone to see. Walking through our meticulously decorated 4,000 square feet home, a space I had worked hard to perfect and showcase as the backdrop to James' achievements, my mind raced with questions and uncertainties. The house where I had hosted numerous dinner parties to support his career advancement while setting aside my own writing aspirations. The house where I had cared for him during his residency, stood by him during his father's passing, and patiently awaited the children I longed for, even when he wasn't ready. 2 decades dedicated to a man who could easily remove his wedding ring like discarding a coat. I phoned my dear friend Natalie, making sure to maintain composure in my voice. "Could you come over? I could use your assistance with something for the event." Within an hour, she sat across from me at the kitchen counter. The letter lay between us, her expression shifting from disbelief to indignation to sorrow on my behalf. "That deceitful, unfaithful jerk," she murmured. "Becca, I'm truly sorry." "Don't worry," I responded, surprised by the steadiness in my tone. "I'm not canceling the celebration. Do you really still want to proceed with the vow renewal?" Natalie asked, bewildered. I grinned, feeling a newfound clarity envelop me. "Oh, we're definitely having it." During a ceremony, not the one James was anticipating, the signs had been present all along. I had simply chosen not to acknowledge them. The late nights, the sudden password protection on his phone, the frequent business trips that had increased over the last year, the new cologne that was unfamiliar to me, the subtle turning away while texting when he thought I wasn't looking. These were all classic red flags that I, a writer who had written articles about relationship warning signs, had deliberately overlooked in my own marriage. As I revisited Sophia's letter that evening, memories resurfaced like shadows emerging from murky depths. 6 months ago, the discovery of a long blonde hair on his jacket, swiftly brushed off as likely from a new surgical nurse. 3 months ago, a jewelry store charged on the credit card statement for a gift I never received. "It's for my mother's birthday," he had explained, despite his mother's birthday being 4 months away. Yet, what stung the most wasn't the affair itself, but realizing how James had systematically isolated me over the years. He had subtly eroded my confidence, ambitions, and relationships. Whenever I mentioned returning to journalism full-time, he would dismiss it as just a nice hobby. He claimed my position required a specific support system at home. When my mother expressed concern over my happiness, he suggested limiting her visits, insinuating jealousy. He discouraged friendships that encouraged my personal growth, labeling them as bad influences. I had sacrificed pieces of myself, believing I was building something meaningful with a man who respected me. The next morning, I visited James' hospital during his surgery block, seeking answers from his administrative assistant, Lisa, who had always been kind to me despite James' undermining behavior. Rebecca expressed genuine surprise to see me, and I closed her office door before asking for help with our anniversary surprise. She eagerly offered assistance when I mentioned James misplacing information about his Chicago conference from last September. Specifically, he wanted to reference a presentation he gave during the event. I asked if she could locate those files for me. Lisa hesitated momentarily before agreeing to check her computer for the requested document. As she searched, I mentioned James meeting an important connection named Sophia at the conference and asked if she should be included in the acknowledgement. Lisa's reaction was notable as her fingers paused over the keyboard. She carefully responded that she did not recall a Sophia, but offered to check the attendee list for verification. I observed as she retrieved files, avoiding eye contact with me. She printed out several documents and handed them to me with a forced smile. As I turned to leave, she softly spoke, "Rebecca, if you ever need to talk about anything, I'm here." The look in her eyes revealed her understanding. She knew. It occurred to me that she might have even been complicit in some of his deceit. Sitting in my car, I examined the documents. They revealed that James had attended the Chicago conference, but had extended his stay by 3 days without an official reason. The hotel receipt showed charges for 2 breakfasts in bed for him and Sophia, while I had been under the impression he was away saving lives. That night, James returned home late as usual. I greeted him with a glass of his favorite whiskey and a forced smile. "How's the anniversary speech coming?" I inquired, concealing my inner turmoil. "I've been working on mine all day." He loosened his tie, appearing momentarily uneasy. "Still working on it. You know, I'm not great with public speaking," he replied, trailing off awkwardly. I nonchalantly responded as he took a sip of his drink, observing his reaction closely. Pausing with the glass midway to his lips, he locked eyes with me, searching for confirmation of what I knew. "Who?" he inquired, his voice composed. "Sophia," I reiterated, the surgical nurse with blonde hair known for organizing department events. "She mentioned how impressed she was by your presentation in Chicago." His face visibly relaxed, almost comically relieved. "Oh, right. I had forgotten she was there," he admitted. "I'm heading to bed early," I mumbled, turning away to conceal the tears welling up. Tomorrow was a big day with final party preparations. As I made my way up the stairs, I overheard him making an urgent and hushed phone call, likely cautioning Sophia and concocting new falsehoods to conceal the old ones. It was that night, lying beside the unfamiliar man I once called my husband, that I reached a pivotal realization. For years, I had harbored a fear of losing James, of solitude, and of disrupting the life we had built. Yet, as I listened to his steady breathing, I came to terms with the fact that I had already lost everything. That mattered, I'd lost myself, I said. And suddenly, I wasn't afraid anymore. The next morning, I woke with absolute clarity about what needed to be done. This wasn't just about exposing James' infidelity. It was about reclaiming my voice after years of being silenced. While James was in the shower, I copied Sophia's letter, placing the original in my safety deposit box at the bank. The evidence needed to be protected, and I called Natalie. "I need you to contact everyone coming to the ceremony," I told her. "Not to cancel, just to make sure they absolutely attend, especially James' hospital board members. Tell them there's going to be a special announcement." "Are you sure about this?" she asked. "More sure than I've been about anything in years," I replied. After James left for work, I drove to see my old law professor, Marcus Chen, who had become a family friend. I'd edited his legal textbook years ago before James had convinced me to focus solely on supporting his career. Everything, the affair, the gaslighting, the financial situation, I explained. James had insisted I put my inheritance into our joint accounts, how he'd encouraged me to remain financially dependent on him. "I don't want to destroy them, Marcus," I said. "I just want what's fair, and I want the truth to be known." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "Rebecca, did you know that James consulted me about changing your beneficiary designations last month?" My blood ran cold. "What?" "He said you had both agreed to make his hospital foundation the primary beneficiary of your life insurance and retirement accounts." I told him both parties needed to be present for such changes. Another lie. Another betrayal, deeper than I'd imagined. Marcus pulled out his laptop. Let's talk about what you're legally entitled to. And then let's talk about the strategy for your anniversary event. By the time I left his office, I had a comprehensive understanding of my financial rights and a concrete plan for the ceremony. Marcus had also connected on. I had a meeting scheduled with a forensic accountant to investigate our finances right away. Following that, my next destination was the office of Dr. Eleanor West, the hospital's chief of surgery and James's direct superior. Although we had crossed paths at hospital events before, James had always discouraged a closer relationship with Eleanor, citing her as challenging and politically complex. Despite this, Eleanor greeted me warmly when I entered her office. "Rebecca, what a pleasant surprise. Everything all right?" she inquired. I confessed that everything was not all right and that I needed to discuss James with her in confidence. Over the next hour, I shared specific details of my findings with her. Though Eleanor maintained a professional demeanor, I could see her grip tighten around her coffee mug. I had my suspicions when discrepancies appeared in the Whitley grant application, she finally revealed. James claimed to have conducted initial research that did not match our department records. Curious about the mention of the Whitley grant, I inquired further. Eleanor paused before explaining, "It's a highly esteemed research grant. James is the primary applicant, but the foundation requires full transparency from all participants, including financial disclosures. As I thought about the questionable transfers I had found in our accounts, I decided to bring it up. She leaned in, saying, "Rebecca, if you're planning what I suspect, just know that the hospital board, led by Walter Whitley himself, will be attending your anniversary party." I grinned, replying, "I'm counting on it." The most challenging part of my preparation was informing my parents, who always held James in high regard. They had intended to fly in for the ceremony the next day. "Mom, Dad," I started cautiously, "there's something you must know before you come." My mother gasped as I revealed the truth, while my father's silence signaled his anger. "We'll catch the next flight out tonight," my mother declared. "You should not be alone at a time like this." Despite their shock, I had insisted I wouldn't cancel the ceremony and needed their support. "Whatever you need, we're here for you," my father assured me, his voice filled with emotion. With a swirl of emotions in my heart, I sat at my vanity that evening, gazing at my reflection in anticipation of our pre-anniversary dinner with dear friends. The woman staring back at me appeared transformed, exuding strength and determination, her eyes radiating clarity and focus. Suddenly, James came up behind me, his hands gently resting on my shoulders. "You look absolutely stunning," he whispered, planting a soft kiss on my neck. Catching his gaze in the mirror, I revealed, "I've poured my heart into crafting my bows all day. I have a feeling they will take everyone by surprise." A hint of uncertainty flickered across James' expression at the edge in my voice, but he quickly masked it with a practiced smile. "I can't wait to hear them," he smoothly replied. As we made our way to the restaurant, James reached for my hand, a gesture that once filled me with warmth, but now seemed like yet another facade in our marriage of pretense. Reluctantly, I allowed my hand to rest in his, thoughts swirling with memories of Sophia's tucked-away letter, Marcus' legal maneuvering, Eleanor's shocking revelation about the grant, and the diligent work of the forensic accountant already in progress. Covering James' financial deceptions, "I love you," James said as we arrived at the restaurant. I turned to him with a forced smile. "I know exactly how much you love me," I replied, masking my true feelings. "And tomorrow, everyone else will know too." The day of our anniversary emerged bright and clear, symbolizing the unveiling of the truth that had been concealed for far too long. Our vow renewal ceremony was set for 4:00 p.m. in the garden of the country club, where we had celebrated our wedding reception 2 decades ago. James had insisted on an extravagant event, claiming we deserved this celebration. My parents arrived early that morning, my mother displaying a determined expression despite her red-rimmed eyes. My father hugged me tightly, his practicality showing through. "We've set up your own accounts," he whispered, prepared for any eventuality. James surprised me by being unusually attentive, fetching me coffee and ensuring I had everything I needed for the day ahead. During the ceremony, I couldn't help but wonder if Sophia had somehow warned him or if he suspected what was to come. However, his eyes only revealed his usual self-absorption and practiced charm that he had honed over the years. Natalie came to assist me in getting ready, bringing along the makeup artist and hairstylist. As they worked on me, turning me into the ideal image of a devoted wife, Natalie reassured me that everyone, without exception, would be in attendance, from the hospital board to his colleagues in surgery, and even the pharmaceutical representative he had been collaborating with. Confirming that Walter Whitley had personally accepted the invitation, I nodded, locking eyes with Natalie through the mirror. Safia had also agreed to come this morning. The anticipation made my heart race, but my determination remained steadfast. Upon arriving at the venue at 3:30, James went ahead to welcome the guests while I stayed in the bridal suite, ostensibly for final preparations. In reality, I was reviewing the evidence I had gathered, a letter, financial documents, and text messages that I had managed to recover. As I strolled through the crowd, my gaze swept over familiar faces. Walter Whitley sat in the third row, accompanied by Eleanor West, while James's surgical team and the hospital board were also in attendance. Towards the back, discreetly seated, was a stunning blonde woman whose face I recalled from hidden photos on James's secondary email account. Safia, the efficient judge who doubled as James's golf partner, greeted me with a benevolent smile as I stood across from my husband. James reached for my hands, his eyes reflecting only adoration. It was a flawless facade. The judge, Safia, initiated the ceremony, marking the occasion of James and Rebecca Mitchell's vow renewal to commemorate 2 decades of partnership, respect, and loyalty. Laughter bubbled up inside at the irony, but she suppressed it as James and Rebecca prepared to exchange their renewed vows. They had each written personal messages for the occasion. "James, would you like to start?" prompted the officiant. James cleared his throat and pulled out a folded paper from his pocket. "Rebecca," he began, his voice resonating through the garden. "20 years ago, I promised to love and cherish you. Today, in front of our loved ones, I stand to reaffirm that promise." He continued with heartfelt words about partnership, gratitude, and looking forward to the future. His delivery was flawless, hitting emotional notes just right, striking a balance between humility and confidence. As James finished, tears flowed freely among the audience, except for one pair of dry eyes first. "Rebecca," the officiant turned to her, "would you like to share your vows now?" "Yes," she said quietly. Stepping away from James, she turned to face their guests directly. Pulling out note cards from her clutch, she was about to dive into her heartfelt speech. The moment I began to recite my own vows, my voice steadied. I felt compelled to share a more truthful reflection of our marriage. James' expression shifted from confusion to alarm as I started reading aloud a letter I had received recently. Addressed to Mrs. Mitchell, I spoke loud enough for everyone to hear, revealing the details of an affair that James had been having for the past 11 months. The audience collectively gasped as I described the betrayals, the lies, and the broken promises that had unfolded during their illicit relationship. James paled as I recounted their secret vacations and whispered promises to leave me. Despite James' attempts to stop me, I pressed on, my voice growing stronger with each revelation. When I reached the intimate moments they shared, James made a desperate grab for the letter, his face drained of color. He pleaded with me to stop, even resorting to hissing and shouting as my father and Marcus Shen intervened to prevent any further confrontation. The chaos engulfed the once composed audience, with murmurs, gasps, and the sound of chairs scraping as attendees stood to witness the unfolding drama. Amidst the noise, I called out, "Ding drama, James?" My words resonated across the room, catching the attention of our guests, including the hospital board and Mr. Whitley. I questioned James about funds from our joint accounts being transferred to an offshore account, coincidentally matching the amount of the Whitley Foundation grant. Eleanor West rose from her seat, demanding answers from James. His face twisted in panic. He struggled to respond, claiming it was a private matter. I interjected, challenging him to finish his sentence. "Clearly aware that you've been falsifying research data, embezzling grant money, living a double life?" Turning to our guests, I expressed my refusal to continue living a lie. Despite supporting James' career and defending him to others, it was clear he had deceived me. I disclosed how I had invested my inheritance into our life together while he was secretly planning to leave. Throughout the audience, people were on their feet, creating a lively atmosphere. Walter Whitley engaged in an urgent conversation with Eleanor West, while James' colleagues displayed a range of emotions from shock to vindication. It seemed that I wasn't the only one who had suspected something was amiss. As I turned my attention, I noticed Safia quietly making her way toward the exit, our eyes briefly locking across the garden. There was no sense of triumph in her expression, only a solemn acknowledgement. She gave me a subtle nod before disappearing from view. Shifting my gaze back to James, I saw him standing there frozen, his facade of a perfect life beginning to crumble before him. In that moment, I saw through the facade of the successful surgeon, The charming husband, the deeply insecure man who had constructed his achievements on a foundation of lies and manipulation. As the realization of the consequences dawned on him, both professionally and personally, James Mitchell, the renowned surgeon, broke down in tears. The sobs that racked his body were not gentle. They were desperate, causing him to hunch over in front of those who had once held him in high regard. In front of the hospital board that would soon be conducting an investigation, amidst a crowd of admiring colleagues and envious friends, I made a quiet announcement. I have filed for divorce. The room fell into stunned silence as I revealed that the papers had been served to his office that morning. Along with this, I disclosed evidence of financial irregularities to the hospital board and the Whitley Foundation. Placing my wedding ring on the podium, I declared that our marriage had been a facade for too long. Today's performance is over, James. Walking back up the aisle with my head held high, I felt the weight of 20 years of pretense lifting from my shoulders with each step. My parents and Natalie joined me, while Marcus Chen began organizing the next legal steps. As I left, James stood at the altar, broken and exposed, finally facing the consequences of his actions. The following months were marked by. In our social group, the revelations proved to be both more challenging and less daunting than I had expected. It was a difficult process unraveling a 20-year marriage due to the many legal, financial, and emotional complexities involved. However, as each hurdle was overcome, I found myself rediscovering my true identity more profoundly than I had in years. The divorce proceedings proceeded quickly, with James accepting a substantial settlement in a bid to salvage his reputation. Subsequently, the hospital board launched a thorough investigation into his research and financial dealings, leading to his suspension pending further scrutiny. The Whitley Foundation, on the other hand, retracted their grant offer and initiated an independent audit. Despite the inevitable speculation and gossip from the local media, I opted not to engage, focusing instead on rejuvenating both my life and my self-esteem. 3 months following the divorce finalization, I found myself signing the last set of papers in Marcus Chen's office. As I completed the process, he handed me his business card with a reassuring gesture. The editor-in-chief of Berkeley Press had some exciting news to share. He explained that she was interested in your book proposal. I was speechless as I stared at the card. The proposal, a manuscript delving into how high-achieving women can often become supporting characters in their own lives, had been a secret project of mine for months. I didn't submit a proposal, I said in disbelief. Marcus smiled knowingly and revealed that Natalie had submitted it with your notes and sample chapters, claiming you had given her permission. Although I hadn't officially done so, my best friend had understood my desires even before I did. 6 months later, my parents assisted me in moving into a bright and modern apartment in the city, which was a far cry from the traditional colonial homes they believed were suitable for a surgeon's wife. I decorated the space with books, art, and furniture that reflected my personal taste rather than conforming to a preconceived image. On a lovely autumn evening, I hosted my first dinner party, inviting Natalie, my parents, Marcus, and his wife, as well as Eleanor West, who had become both a friend and mentor as I navigated this new chapter of my life.